Welcome yet again to another edition of the Civ Battle Royale. It is now time for part 96, Stalin's Own. My name is Dawkinzz and let's get right into it. Hello everyone and welcome to part 96 of everyone's favorite bloodbath, the Civ Battle Royale. This is Bronakis, a supporter of all things icy blue. Seen above here is the first post on the sub that's made me audibly laugh in a while. User The Honesty Fish's The Power Rankers Dilemma. As always, we start with our fantastic maps. Here is Melon's map, which never ceases to amaze me with its detail. And here, of course, we have the tile-accurate map. Good lord, look at the border gore in old Vietnamese Empire. Bring on the good old power ranking slide. Boers, unsurprisingly, remain at number 1. And we kick things off with a nice view of North America, showcasing the incredibly carpeted Blackfoot, surrounded by the chilly blue Inuit. One would be tempted to think that it'd be an even matchup just due to the Blackfoot carpet, but look at the tech difference. Marines versus biotroopers. Hell, look at the city defenses. Marines and paratroopers won't cut it, Crowfoot. In the World Congress news, we see scholars and residence passes. Should make tech catch up even easier now. I consider the Blackfoot almost like the hillbillies of the CBR. They're a little backwards when it comes to science, and they're focused primarily on religion, but that seems to have been working for the GOP, so maybe it'll work for them. You can't let Parks one-up you like that. You need your own Pacific garbage patch, says Big Carrier's Korean sales rep to Sejong. The Ice Sheet fleet is looking a little more smartly built to the north, where the only melee ships I can see are Blackfoot. The Boers continue to struggle to make it past the Indus River. They have a slight advantage at the moment, with more melee units near the border cities than Vietnam, but it looks like both sides are running out of steam at the moment. Also of note, it appears Susa has been reduced to a pile of radioactive mush. Rest in peace. The Siberian assault is starting to crack through Swedish lines. Gothenburg, Moscow, and Antioch are all looking ready to fall in the upcoming turns. Swedes are putting up a hell of a resistance with what they have, though. Fueled with Stalin's own liquid courage, TM, brave Swedes storm Stalingrad and Yevyaskya, retaking them for the blue and yellow. Not easily defeated, Sibir has Stalingrad surrounded and ready to flip back, along with Kharkov to the south. The Icelanders retake Constantinople, seriously shrinking southern Sweden. Every city is in the black, however, so a Swedish snipe wouldn't be too crazy, unless a crazy Blackfoot boy comes in. Faltering on 4 fronts, the Swedes lose Hamburg to the Icelanders. It's not looking good for everyone's favorite opportunists, but off in the distance, a Swedish general is elated to hear that they can attack in any direction they please. With an amphibious assault, Sweden is now back in control of both Jyväskylarsky's. Unfortunately for them, the Siberians are likely to fit back the one with the nicer weather and strategic value. Shucks. The hungover Swedes get forced back out of Stalingrad. It seems the Swedes have the slight upper hand in numbers at the moment, but Sibir, they will win in the long run. Gustavus needs to get Khan to the negotiating table quick if he wants to survive. Kakinen plots Armenian death and destruction from his palace in Tiamin, the capital of Exclavia. It's pretty well carpeted, but I guess that's easy to do when you don't own 2 of the tiles adjacent to your city. Regardless, a war to determine who's less irrelevant would be fun to see. Panduranga, once the capital of the mighty Cham, has been reduced to 2 population. It's in Australian hands for now, and it seems the Kimberley Peacekeeping Force is finally working in the Aussies' favor for once. A huge push for Sibir in the south blasts a hole in the Swedish defense. Getting squeezed by the twin grey blobs on both sides may just push the Swedish all the way back to Scandinavia at this rate. A quick peep into Yerevan shows the Armenians are cranking out paratroopers. Could there be a long-range snipe planned in the works? Probably not, but one could hope. Tiamin, on the other hand, produces a recycling center because they're just so environmental now. Hey, when you can't hold land to save your life, making resources out of thin air makes sense. Ambon falls back to Vietnam, but they aren't likely to hold it for long. Then again, neither will Australia hold Panduranga much longer by the looks of things. Lashkargár falls to the Borg. Both sides seem to have brought a good chunk of reinforcements, so it'll get a lot bloodier, more exciting, and a stalemate until one lands another punch. The Swedes march south towards Iceland to try to maintain their Balkan holdings, but each wave is looking thinner and slower than the last. Ever a lover of collecting capitals, Ingolfur marches through the streets of Berlin. The Swedes have a good deal of land left, but the bell tolls for all leaders someday. At this rate, it may toll for Gustavus before it does for Kekkonen. It'd be some pretty sweet revenge for Exclavia to outlive Sweden. Panduranga is back in Vietnamese hands. This front is looking pretty rough for the Aussies, in no small part because of the thorn in the side Kimberley. Come on, John Damara, let some carnage happen. A small Vietnamese naval force is sent to terrorize the western Aussie coast, and the Strayans don't seem to have more than a single naval unit to deal with them. For the world's biggest military, that's pretty surprising. It seems the Vietnamese brought nukes to a ship fight too, judging by the pillaged mine. Rangoon, home of the best way to serve crab meat. Don't fight me on this one, it's true. Seems to have been nuked itself. It's in both Boer and Aussie range, so it's a toss-up as to who's the culprit. In the east, it seems Saigon and Dong Hoi are on the last legs of their lives, and Hanoi is under threat too. Moscow appears to have flipped a couple of times, down to 3 population. The Swedes have done a hell of a job defending Kharkov, and here they've even retaken Stalingrad. Seems like Stalin's own, TM, is some pretty addictive stuff. Though Łódź and Malmo are under heavy threat, it seems the Swedes are grinding Iceland to a halt, slowly but surely of course. Iceland is certainly winning this war at the moment though. The Swedish flag is back over Constantinople, and a push on Ohrid seems to be next on the agenda. It's really a seesaw in the European theater at the moment. The Brazilian overflow washes up on the shores of Inuit Central America. One has to wonder if these units are just really late for the short-lived Inuit-Brazil war a few parts back. They must be pretty confused. In a tremendous effort, the Aussies take Vijayjay, I did pronounce that incorrectly on purpose, and Panduranga. When Saigon and Dong Hoi, I don't have to mispronounce that one, when they fall, it's going to be a 2-pronged attack on Hanoi, already deep in the red. Things aren't looking good for the sisters, as mission control for their space station is based in Hanoi. Lashkargár is back in the hands of the Vietnamese. Of course, like all victories on this front, it is likely to be short-lived. Viet nukes are aboard a carrier and heading for the Boers. If they make it to the core, they could do some real damage here. On the other hand, the Boer cyber subs probably won't let that carrier get too close. Gothenburg is traded for Antioch, but holy hell, the Siberians took Minsk? Things are looking worse for Gustavus, even if he's likely to take it back. The Siberians and Icelanders are really giving the Swedes the squeeze as Kharkov and Stalingrad flip again as things grow more dire for them. There's hardly a single front that I'd consider them winning on, and they have 4 of them. Constantinople goes gray once again as the Swedes reclaim Ohrid. Constantinople will likely flip back yellow soon, but this pancake war, get it, because it's flip-floppity, is really draining the Swedish resources desperately needed elsewhere. Malmo falls to the Icelanders as Sweden looks incredibly likely to lose damn near everything aside from Scandinavia. One of the Grey forces lob a nuke all the way up to Linköping, a city that one would think would be safe from this war. No rest for the weary, I suppose. Also, it is incredibly sad that the only Swedish naval melee unit I can see is a privateer. It's 3026 Sweden, get it together. Big Carrier continues their death grip on Iceland's navy. The Great Atlantic Garbage Patch is really shaping up to be greater and garbagier than its Pacific counterpart. The Brazilian overflow reaches all the way north. I think the scarier thing for the Inuit is the lack of their own carpet, though. I mean, I know they have a ton of land, but you have to have a carpet, Ekanik. The Brazilian Antarctic colonies are looking pretty nice right about now. Well defended, out of the way, peaceful and prosperous. Might be one of the nicest places to live on the cylinder if you like snowball fights and high population density. If Parks ever loses everything but one area, he's going to be keeping his Antarctic holdings. These things are natural fortresses. Also, World Congress is looking to ban truffles and reject natural heritage sites like every other session. If they ban truffles, how am I going to get my umami burger? Recruit, I'm not even going to try, uncovered a plot from the Mongols to take down the Snoryaks once and for all. All I'm going to say, Genghis, is do it. Saigon appears to have flipped back and forth a time or two, but that seems to be the only Aussie progress since we last visited them. Vijay and Panduranga are back in Vietnamese hands for the moment, but don't count on them staying there for too long. The Boers push the border past the Indus and take Lashkargah and Kandahar. Vietnam really can't do well on two fronts at once. They just pushed the Strayans out of Southeast Asia, and now this? Gee whiz. The Swedes continue to get railroaded by the Siberians, but things are looking up. In the bottom of the screen you can see they've made peace with the Icelanders. Is it too little, too late though? Holy hell, look at that border gore. Iceland gets to keep the prized Constantinople as well as most of the Balkans, but at least the Swedes got Ohrid. The Swedes lost a good chunk of land here, Malmo, Berlin, Hamburg, and a ton of damage to their heartland cities. I can't tell if this was a stupid peace deal offering or an actual invasion, but giving Iceland a beachhead for your next war on the Scandinavian peninsula can't be a good thing. Let's take a trip to Jokusai, producing nothing right now with its 356 hammers. That's good. But golden science are flowing like water. Korea is doing pretty well for itself. On the Mongol side, we have Sanchu, starving, also producing nothing with its 43 hammers, and doesn't even have half the buildings Jokusai has. On a tangentially related note, Sejong, declare war. Everyone's favorite one-tile island, Kanaohe, is up next, producing mobile SAM units, perhaps preparing for the day someone comes back to wipe Hawaii off the map. Most people want to see Yakusha killed already, and I'm among them, but I really want to see the original Peacekeepers get wiped out. Peace is not allowed on the cylinder. They can't keep clinging to life. Parks, please. Not wanting to let the Trungs be the only ones in space, Engelfer orders a space station to be built in Waterford. To the left and the right and the top and bottom, you can see an incredible amount of carriers floating around doing absolutely nothing. Off in the peaceful lands of the professional peacekeepers, Djarjin is producing a stock exchange. Compared to the cities we've been seeing, the city looks pretty underdeveloped, but it is an Antarctica. The pendulum swings back towards the Aussies and they take Ambon, Panduranga, and Thaili Bimai. With every flip of Panduranga, it looks increasingly more likely that Australia will hold it. The sisters are running out of units and cities to produce them in. Never one to lose on both fronts at once, Vietnam scrounges up a hell of an army and sends them west to reconquer the Indus River Valley from the Boer. This time, however, they're meeting some stiff resistance, but in purely numbers. Vietnam seems to have the slight upper hand at the moment. Sweden is getting pushed back heavily on this front. Hopes of holding both Jyväskylä are fading fast. Moscow is loosely gray, but likely to stay gray when all is said and done. Poor Swedish boys. Even more Brazilian overflow, this time in Iceland. Brazil, do some good with these units. Attack the Boers while they're busy with the Trungs. Start OCP Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Also, look how massive Porto is. 45 population. Someone check to see if it's the biggest city on the cylinder. Maria must be going mad. In the ever more green, and not just because the radiation Sahara, we see a pretty sparse showing of Boer units that aren't turn-time murdering workers. Brazil would do fairly well in a war here, at least during the beginning, but doing damage to the heart of the Boers would be fantastic for everyone who doesn't want to see the Orange Menace prosper and steamroll like they've been doing. Me. In the more peaceful, but still getting bombed part of the Australian Isles, we see fewer units than one would expect. Are the Aussies running out of units to throw at the Vietnamese? Korea looks pretty well carpeted at first, but it's really just their navy. The Mongols probably have the most land units in this slide, but I'm certainly not counting them up. Kandahar goes back to green, Lashkargah is next. The seesaw teeters back to Vietnam. Kuopio Falls, Linköping, and Jefferson are under heavy threat, and Sweden is getting backed up heavily. The poor ethnic Finns in these cities can't catch a break. The Isles are looking pretty sparse these days. It's pretty clear Ingolfur threw everything he had at the Swedes. Brazil and Aussie overflow make it this far north. The Strayans better get those guys back to Vietnam. Their conquests sit largely undefended. Antioch flips back to the Swedes, but their victory is going to be short-lived. A massive Siberian reinforcement is on the way. The Swedes better get some kind of peace deal soon, or they could be turned into another Mongolia. The Boers continue the stalemate at the Indus. With a steady trickle of units coming from both sides, neither will have the upper hand to move the front either deeper into India or back to the mountains without some kind of overwhelming surge. Dong Hoi is pretty solidly Aussie. The Vietnamese keep throwing everything they've got at defending Saigon, since holding it means holding Hanoi. Mounted on a spider tank are 2 nuclear missiles. Australia is trying to go in for the kill. Damn Australian spiders. Now they're even radioactive. A lone Australian cyber sub stares down the huge Vietnamese armada descending upon the old Kimberley coast. Windjana has been nuked yet again, unless Australia's workers are really that slow. The only good thing for the Aussies on this slide is that Vietnam forgot to pack a melee unit. Over in eastern Australia, one can see a bunch of naval units sitting around doing absolutely nothing to protect the about-to-be-hammered west coast. Come on, Parks, go sink some ships. The Korean Inuit border is looking pretty thin on both sides. Ekenik would do well to carpet Kamchatka and hit the Koreans with an invasion. He needs some more Asian clay. As the Lone Star battleship drifts along in the Pacific Ocean, Sam Houston looks up from his bottle of Southern comfort. His advisors tell him that Kumsha Khan wishes him dead. Sam gets up from his chair, staggers to his desk, and sloppily loads up his 6-shooter. "Let him come and try," he slurs, only to pass out shortly after. Gorky, that's really a city's name, is looking awfully hungry these days. They produce quite a bit of gold, but citizens can't eat shiny metal, except maybe the Boers. Eidsvoll, a highly productive Swedish city, produces yet another worthless cyber sub. You are losing ground, Gustavus. Make a melee unit. Looking at Ciudad Juarez now, we see the Blackfoot are producing power armor infantry. Lord knows that somewhere in the world needs another placeholder to fill every last tile and not use them. Not content with this reality, the Borg construct another simulation server. They render a spherical Earth, one where 200 civilizations fight for domination. Well, folks, no info-addict slides this week. I'm sorry, I know, they're like the best part. So that just about wraps it up for us. This has been Bronakis. It's been a real pleasure. And my name is Dawkinzz, and thank you for joining me yet again, and we'll see you next time.